Hello, everyone. It's Charlton. Please subscribe to my channel. Tap the notification bell. I'd appreciate it majorly. So I just want to take a look at this again, and I have been thinking about it and sort of just following this individual's life ever since this story broke. Obviously, the nature in which he was killed is, kind of gets your attention. That's for sure. So, but the more I looked into the dude, he's just fascinating. Seemed like a very nice person, somebody who came from pretty modest, humble background, and totally, was doing really well, and just seemed like he had an excellent attitude and all that. And so the authorities, I assume they're not revealing everything that they know, and they haven't necessarily identified a motive. That's like the big mystery is who was this individual that was dressed in like a previous reports, initial reports that he was dressed in a suit. I kind of took that to mean like business suit, but I think suit was like some kind of black, all black like ninja type suit. That's how he was described by the police, and it is odd that he allowed the individual, but this is because we're in this pandemic, coronavirus, time that people dress like that, don't stand out quite as much as they normally would. So he allowed the dude to get into the elevator with him, but he was dressed in like some kind of all black outfit with a hoodie and a mask, gloves on, and had some kind of large suitcase with him that presumably he was going to use to take the remains of his body with him out of there, when he was completed, So they have, this all took place on Monday. They think Monday afternoon around 1:40 was the last time he was seen there. I think by a neighbor, entering the building or something like that. I don't know what time the surveillance footage is on the elevator. That's where the surveillance camera is inside the elevator. I don't know if it's in the lobby as well. But it's not in his unit. So once the elevator door closes, after he gets up to the 7th floor where his condo is, it's very nice high-end condo building where each floor has its own condo unit, and the elevator opens directly into the unit. As soon as the elevator doors close, that's where the footage ends. And but they do see, they see him attacked by the individual before the elevator door closes. The Daily Beast describes it pretty well, and I'm not going to read things word for word if I don't have to. So, and I'm just going to go over as much as I've learned, over this. And like anything, you're always trying to like solve these things and try to figure out like who did this, And I don't know. I really don't. I have some ideas, and I do think it might have to do with the fact that he was trying to, this is his latest venture in Nigeria that he had been working on for some time. I think he started it in, first started in 2017 maybe, but had really, was really trying to, was on the ground doing it. It was not so much a ride-sharing motorcycle business, but a ride-hailing, basically a motorcycle taxi business in Lagos, Nigeria. That had an app that came with it, as well as technology. They owned the bikes. I think they had something like 1,000 motorbikes that they had procured. That were pretty. There's a fair amount of cost to that. They had raised a lot of money. Recently, or some, not tons for these kinds of startup ventures. They had raised like $5 million in around June of 2019 last year. They've gone through a couple different CEOs that basically were from the States, but also from that area. That were, I believe, born and native to Nigeria and native to Lagos in particular. I think that Lagos is Nigeria's most populated city that I believe is right on the coast there in Africa. I don't think it's the capital, but it's massive, 20 million people. Nigeria's got 200 million people in it. It's a big world. And I don't know, in terms of motive, like who would want to do this, I definitely keep thinking back to, having something to do with that. And I mean, they tell you who he raised money from, the various investors or some of them, and they seem to be like three different type of investment firms, that invested, as well as some individual local investors. But the kind of dollar amounts that we're talking about, a total of $5 million raised, I don't know. That just doesn't get you to this type of crime. But who knows? So you piss off the wrong person, excuse me, and I don't know. I kind of think and then I'll go through everything. I promise. I'm thinking there is a humongous industry that is just now in the budding stages that could be into the many hundreds of millions, even into the billions, in that city, that country, and beyond. And these things that, it's interesting. I was reading the articles. It's just the ride sharing or ride hailing business is like a beginning. It's almost like an acorn or a Trojan horse to many other services that are all, controlled through, technology, the phone, the app, and so forth. They're all sort of crowdsourcing, type of businesses through food delivery, courier businesses, payment, and industries and in markets that are completely untapped at this point, And so that's the kind of money that would lead somebody to do something like this, is what I'm thinking. Anyway, so this is his, this is his unit there. And they do believe that that the individual may have been interrupted in the middle of the crime, even though it began on Monday and extended into Tuesday when his sister arrived. He was interrupted by the sister showing up, and that he had to possibly flee out of the unit down the stairwell, which is here. Here's the elevator. Here's the lobby, and I think that person is basically, there's the doorway into it and entering into what is like an elevator here. And, here's the building. And his unit's all the way up on the top, the 7th floor, and down this way is the stairs, So you enter, I guess, right there is the doorway, the elevator's there, and so forth. And they describe the surveillance footage as the individual entering the elevator with, I already forgot his name, Fahim Saleh. And, that they spoke to each other, but there's no audio on the surveillance, so we don't know what was said. And that they describe Fahim Saleh being sort of looking at the individual who, puzzled as he kind of fumbles through what to do, because the elevator it's very modern, doesn't have like buttons to push up to the floor. You can only get to your floor by fobbing something, with your fob, your security fob, and it knows what your unit's at, and it takes you there. And because the person, I guess, hasn't been there before, isn't familiar with that, and is confused by the fact that it has no buttons. But he rides all the way up to the top with Fahim Saleh, and then it shows, as the door opens, that Fahim Saleh gets out and goes to the right. And it says, the account says that the individual that got on in the ninja suit and the mask and hoodie and so forth, follows him out and raises his hand at him like this. And they assume he was maybe tasered. And that because immediately Fahim Saleh drops to the floor and seems incapacitated. And that's when the doors close. And so after that, they don't know exactly. And he went to the right, okay? When the sister arrived later the next day, at around 3:30 p.m., and there's differing reports about what prompted her to go there. Some reports just say she hadn't heard from her brother. I think he was pretty close to his two sisters. He had a younger and older sister, and they lived in New York as well. And so when she hadn't heard from him, she got worried and she came over. There was another report that a neighbor had heard screaming and had called her to check on him, but that I don't know which one's true. So there's a video over at his YouTube channel, and there's pictures of him and his sisters throughout his social media, seems like, it was a very loving family. Even his parents are in some of his social media as well. But one of his videos is back in 2016. He was doing well. I think he had hit some major stumbling blocks with this Nigerian business that he had founded and was trying to get off the ground, and could have been a humongous payday one day if he was able to successfully do it. But back in 2016, he made a video of himself giving a Tesla to his father, for Father's Day. So 4 years ago, he was already in a financially good enough position to be buying his father a Tesla, which is a very expensive car. And they show him going to his father, whose father's home, and his mom and his dad there, and he picks up his two sisters on before he goes there, and and his father and mother lived in a very, very modest, like row home, I wouldn't even call it a townhome because it was old, it was dated, but it's, homes that are connected to other homes where there's a row of homes on the street with each one having a little fenced in yard in the front. Very modest. So he's Bangladeshi by, his ethnic origin, but he was born in Saudi Arabia for some reason, but his parents moved around quite a bit, eventually settled in upstate New York, I think Rochester, but he came from a very modest background. Anyways, the sister, when she showed up, his torso, and everybody knows, he was completely dismembered. His head was cut off, his arms were cut off, and his legs were cut off from beneath the knee. And she found his torso in the living room, I believe, and the other remains of his body were in like contractor bags in some other part of the apartment, but the autopsy's been done on him, and they believe that after the individual stunned him or shot him, it would have to be stunned him because there's no bullet wounds from the autopsy. He stabbed him many times, fatally in the torso, killing him. And then they believe that, and they do believe this is like a professional hit, even if they don't know if this person was hired. That's what it seems like for sure, to do this, but you never know. You just never know. I mean, there's so many crazy people out there. So, but they believe that the individual waited overnight to get started, like cleaning up and dismembering the body, and he did that intentionally, so that I wasn't aware of this, but so the blood in the person's body would coagulate overnight and be much less messy, I guess would just basically, like clot up, almost like a blood clot. When somebody dies, I guess that happens if their, body's not drained of blood like they normally are when you go to a morgue. But the person intentionally waited overnight to do that so it wouldn't be as messy, dismembering him, and then got busy the next day and, so stayed overnight. It's unbelievable. And, that's why when the sister showed up the next day at 3:30, he was nearing finishing up. They found cleaning supplies and so on. So there wasn't a ton of blood, after he had done that. And when they, he had left his saw, I assume this case that he brought with him. I don't know if he took the case or not, but the remains of the person were not taken. But he left his saw, and which was still plugged in, I assume in the living room because that's where the torso was, And I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know if you're able to identify power tools by, serial numbers. Obviously, model numbers are on there. I think, I'm not sure. I know like appliances have serial numbers on there, and those can be traced back to, basically where they were, what outlet they were sold from and so forth. So I don't know. That might have, that might end up costing the killer, but who knows? So, that's the extent of how they believe it went down. In his most recent venture, Gokada, in Nigeria, he had two different CEOs over the life of the venture, the startup. This was the first one who was removed and I forget his name. Actually, and this guy actually even posted something on his Twitter account and his in his LinkedIn account, just expressing how, sorry he is for the family and so forth. And there's different accounts in terms of the reporting. It's a business, and of how, the reasons for him stepping down or stepping aside. Deji Oduntan, who, I think this was his first major. I don't know how he hooked up with. With Fahim. I don't think they went to school together. I know he studied in the States, even though he's Nigerian, and I don't think he's in Nigeria. I believe he's, in Toronto, and he had a background in banking, his education was pretty good, but not a lot of experience, and not a lot of executive experience, in any kind or startups. But he's from Nigeria, so somehow they hooked up. But at some point, he was asked to step aside. And actually, the company's gone through a series of layoffs, at least twice in 2018 when he was asked to step aside. I'm not real sure, to be honest with you. And I don't want to waste, 2 hours going over this company's history. But basically, when he was asked to step aside, there were layoffs both of technical personnel as well as people that were drivers at the time, I think. And then he brought in a different CEO who was also from Nigeria, but same thing, studied in the States, I believe, and was pretty successful. This guy right there, and his name is Ayodeji Adewunmi. I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong. And he had been successful already before this. He had they had similar sort of stories. He had founded a company, like a job search company for I don't know if it was for Nigeria or some other African nation. I think it was for Sudan. And when he was in college, and co-founded it, I think the CEO of it, and eventually sold it after he got out of college. Probably doing quite well for himself. But he brought him in as a CEO at the same time that right around the same time they raised the 5-point-something million, that 5.3 million from one of the companies, one of the financial investment firms that was investing. He was a director of Rise Capital and a couple other firms that were investing. 5.3 million is not a lot for these kinds of startups at all, So, and I believe this guy Fahim was putting a considerable amount of money, of his own money, into the venture. So that was in right. That was within a month's time of this person stepping aside, which it was I think April to March 2019. Month later, this dude's made CEO, and they're both co-CEOs. In the meantime, he had named himself the CEO, and he remained co-CEO with this guy from in March 2019 to around January of this year, 2020, maybe before this guy stepped down. And not sure, if he was still invested in the organization or what. And then within, basically the announcement that Lagos, Nigeria, was going to ban motorbikes from the taxi service business, that had been made in January. So he was basically stepping down right before this huge announcement was coming. I assume, there was word out there that this was coming. I would have to think. And in February, it went into effect. And actually, they were making inroads. This is his company. Gokada was one of like 3 companies trying to do this, and they were probably the most successful and the most well liked. And they were growing, in terms of their subscriber, people that were using their service. They had 800 drivers. I don't know, if that was prior to the ban immediately, because like I said, they went through, a number of stumbling blocks, but the ban on motorbike taxis, by the government of Lagos, was a significant hit to Gokada, but he remained committed, this guy, and they were basically going to change it to a courier business, and even when they made this guy the CEO, they brought in 2 other Nigerians one was specifically hired to basically manage the relationship of the business with the local government, because it's very key and very difficult in these foreign markets, particularly just certain markets that are tough to navigate, unless you were born and lived there, So, but the thing is, when I kind of read over his story in this business, Gokada, through the ups and downs, even though it was just a short period of time, he remains steadfast and doesn't just keeps plugging ahead and is not going away. And I think that is where the problem may lie, in terms of why he was killed. I mean, obviously, I have no idea. And this could be just anything. It could be something completely unrelated to his business. And they do. The authorities are wondering whether or not there's an international, aspect to this crime. I think they've reached, or a reporter from one of the outlets reached out to the authorities in Lagos, and they say they haven't been contacted by, the New York City Police Department. But if they were, they would help in any way that they could. So, but they do think it's financially motivated, and whether or not, it's a disgruntled investor or something, I tend to think it has an international aspect to it. I do. And that's pretty much the story there. I mean, I don't want to reread all these things. I just want to get to where they... So it's not clear if there's an international component to the crime. A senior police source in the Lagos State Police Command told the Daily Beast that Nigerian authorities are not investigating, but are ready to help if there are leads that point to their country. The detectives suspect that the killing may have been the result of a financial dispute with someone who either hired an assassin or did the murder themselves. And I mean, if there is an international aspect to it, I mean, I guess, they just eventually track down everybody. But I would think that, I don't know, if that's somebody that was from outside the country, they're long gone by now. They may eventually figure that out. But I don't know. So that's the story there. That is the story there. It's a real shame. It really is, When you listen to the individual, who was just doing good, for himself, and I think he seemed like a pretty nice person, and just sort of believed in never giving up, and you can do anything, and he was, That's the story there, man. Thanks for watching my videos. Please subscribe to my channel. Give me a like down below, and I'll see you in the next video. Later, man.